Hello fellow airheads and welcome back to Airhead Barn. In one of our last episodes we successfully opened this final drive. We cleaned everything and inspected parts. Everything seemed to be in a perfect shape. And today we are going to focus on putting things back together and resealing the component. I already have all seals inside. Basically you have three different seals. One goes inside body, another one on a cover, and third one needs to be inserted on ring nut. All those three are done, and now it's time to put bearing inside, ring gear, and basically close the final drive. Before doing that, I want to spend some time talking about the way I do not only this kind of work, but work on all my bikes. So I'm a huge believer in don't fix what isn't broken. I found some comments on YouTube, people saying that things that I'm doing are just too easy. It's not a matter of if it's easy or it's complicated, but the matter of fact is it needed or not. Usually I don't like fixing things that don't need to be fixed. I leave them as they are and only address those things that need to be addressed. You probably noticed that my restoration are not concourse restorations. Those bikes are meant to be ridden, and I don't like putting them in a showroom where they will never be started again. For that type of restoration, whoever likes it, I understand that you would go inside and change all parts there, but for me, how I'm doing it, I like to bring bike back on the road and only address things that need to be addressed. On the other hand, there is also no guarantee when you change all parts that they are going to be better than parts that you already have inside. And here is one proof for that. You noticed that when I was disassembling a gearbox, one of the bearings on the output shaft, like a top bearing, had a significant free play, and I decided that one needs to be replaced. So initially I thought, well, maybe it's original bearing, but it had a lot of free play, and I never seen that much with the original bearings. All those original bearings in a gearboxes were back in the days made by FAG in Germany, while replacement parts are not. They are outsourced. You can find parts made in Italy, parts made in Portugal, parts made in Korea. Some are better, some are worse. And here I have a really nice example. This is the gear that the bearing that I removed from output shaft, and yeah, it's not original actually. This bearing was replaced at some point, so it does not date from 1975 with 50,000 miles. Actually, it should be much less than that. This is a bearing made by SKF. I believe it's a Swedish bearing company. It used to be like very quality stuff. Those bearings used to last a very long time, but at some point of time they moved their production to Italy, and this is Italian made SKF bearing. So this bearing has like ridiculous amount of free play. I have no idea how many miles this one has. Bike has 50,000, but obviously at some point that original bearing was replaced, and now this one was put. So what I want to say, if original bearing, that's my reasoning, if original bearing is fine, leave it there. It might outlast some of these things, and I'm speaking from experience. Back in the days when I was in Croatia helping my father to work on the cars, we almost had no option but to buy SKF made in Italy. Those bearings did not last long time. Like 6,000 miles or 10,000 kilometers, bearings would go bad. It's just ridiculous, but that's how it was back then. I don't know if they changed anything in their manufacturing process and especially quality control, but back in days it was like that. So whenever I see SKF made in Italy, I run away from that thing. And the point here is that actually original bearing with 50 or 100,000 miles can outlast new bearing that is not properly done. All right, so now when we are done with that explanation, we can actually proceed with the work here. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to focus on a pinion gear and put a ring with a new seal. We will torque everything and then we will move to the ring gear. Since this pinion gear was absolutely fine, no issues there, there is no free play in bearing of a pinion gear. As I said, it's not broken, I don't need to address it, I left it here sitting alone. Because of that, I also don't need to check where gears are engaging to each other. If I remove that gear, then putting it back, it could be that gear is a bit more forward or a bit more backward, and it's not engaging with the ring gear in the same position, and I would need to check where exactly that location is. Here in this thing, it's going to be same because nothing was changed. It's going to be same as before disassembling it, and I exactly know where that is because there is actually a wear pattern on this gear, and I can see that it's exactly on the middle where it's supposed to be. So I leave that alone. If you want, you can double check it. The way to do it, you would put dyed grease, colored grease, and then you will start rotating, and wherever grease leaves mark, that's where they are engaging. So I'm absolutely fine that this one is good. Another thing that also needs to be checked in case you are removing that big bearing on a ring nut, you need to check backlash, right? And that means when you are rotating ring gear, what's the free play before it actually starts spinning pinion gear, and there is a specification how much that needs to be. Since I didn't check that before I removed, basically before I disassembled the whole final drive, I'll now double check that. Nevertheless, first now we are going to focus on a pinion gear, assemble everything that's needed here, then we will come to the body, we will put back our roller bearing here, our ring gear, and then we will go with the checking backlash. So I hope you will like this episode, and thanks for joining. Alright, so first goes ring gear, and I'm just going to put like a very small smear of blue Hilomar here. This is just one type of a sealant that is usually used for this thing. Some people also use it for sealing cylinders. I like to use different stuff there, but for this thing it works perfectly well, so you don't have leaks between body and thread ring. You don't need to go crazy here, just really tiny bead. Now our gear goes back in. Next thing, there is basically a plastic washer or seal that usually disappears, after some time. It gets disintegrated, so you don't even see it, it's there. This one goes here. Okay, finally washer and the nut. And for this nut I'm just going to use tiny bit of blue Loctite. Right, so now it's time to heat body up in order to insert roller bearing. Since I already have seal inside, I don't want to heat it directly here because that could basically damage my seal. So I want to heat it from outside in order that heat is properly, dissipated inside the body and expands a bit. So hopefully our bearing goes easily inside. All right. Okay, now we are going to leave everything to cool down to room temperature, and after that we are going to install crown gear, check for backlash, and finally close everything and torque it. So now when everything's sufficiently cooled down, we can actually proceed and put ring gear. So first one goes thrust washer. This one actually determines backlash, so hopefully everything is good and we won't need to change this one, but nevertheless we are going to check it out. In order for thrust washer to stay in place while we are putting ring gear, I'll just place tiny smear of grease here so it doesn't move. Grease is tacky enough so it will keep it in place. Okay. So on part of a ring gear that's going to engage with the seal that we previously put there, I'm just going to put tiny bit of oil. Right. And now we can press everything together. there it is. All right. Okay. Now we would normally put cover, but I want to check for that backlash. So we will need to install the tool. Usually these type of tools are, they are specialty tools made of steel, but I 3D printed this one. This ring actually holds bearing just in place, so it doesn't move. That's all that it's doing. And then this thing is mounted on gears here where dial gauge is going to hit, and that's how we are going to determine backlash. All right. Let's see, where are we? Okay. So it needs to go snug over bearing. Right. Okay. To hold it centered. Okay folks, so here is the setup that I'm using for backlash. Everything is made of 3D plastic. We have here part that connects to the gears, and then this part keeps everything stable, dial gauge, and then your pinion gear is blocked, and then you try to rock everything back and forth, and this is what I'm getting. Maybe like 9 thousandths of an inch. So 9 thousandths of an inch would be a bit more than 0.2 was the maximum backlash, but I'm pretty sure once when we put cover on top and actually press everything, then we will be able to double check it, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be within spec, because we are very close to be at this point within spec. Okay, so now let's try to put a cover on and install everything as it should be. So for the gasket, you can use gasket cinch, works fine. What I found is actually that a bit of grease goes a long way, because later it's so much easier to remove that gasket because there is no glue, there is no sealant there, and also provides a really nice sealant with the gasket. So that's what I'm going to use. Okay, at this point we will leave cover just tiny bit to cool off, and then we are going to torque it. So here now, when everything is mounted, this is what we are getting, around like 7 to 8 thousandths of an inch. That's like, let's do a quick math. So 8 divided by 1000 times 25.4, that's 0.2. So we are right at the spot. So between 7 and 8 we are, so that's, I would say, below 0.2 millimeters is backlash that we are having here. So definitely acceptable. Okay, so with that said, the only remaining thing is actually to grease these blinds, and we are good to go. Alright folks, that's it regarding final drive. This thing we will just put brake shoes back on and it's ready to go back on a bike. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching. See you next time.